Welcome and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. We will be discussing making connections and how CIID supports early childhood data integration using CEDS. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be, I'm just going to quickly go over our agenda. We'll be reviewing CIID's purpose and our expanded Part C scope, findings from our May Part C Data Bridge Summit. We'll be discussing data standards, data integration, and common education data standards, or better known as CEDS. We will also be hearing from the Nevada Part B team, and then we'll be opening up for Q&A. Additionally, right at the end, we will be on our screen. I'm sure if you've joined one of our CIID webinars, you've seen in the past, we do surveys, and we really do use this information to better our surveys, to tweak them based off of all of your feedback. So they really are important. If you have a few minutes, it would be really helpful if you could just complete the survey. I think it's estimated at like less than 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so these are our presenters for today. I will go ahead and introduce myself first. My name is Liz Brunette. I am on the CIID team. I work with a few different states with their CIID implementations. And then additionally, I also do direct work with the tech team on the Generate side. Grace?
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Lou Fleming. I'm a TA provider on CIID. Nicholas,
hi, everyone. Oh, yes. Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas Ortiz. I'm a TA provider with CIID as well.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm the Part B data manager for Nevada, and I receive TA support from CIID.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right, for today's session, we are going to start with learning how CIID can support your data integration efforts and the technical assistance and resources available to you. Then we're going to understand the purpose of a data standard and the role of CEDS, the Common Education Data Standards, as a common language for education data. We're going to explore how CEDS can help connect systems and make data more useful. We'll walk through a CIID example with Nevada on what CEDS can look like in practice and consider how it could help your own program. Along the way, we'll identify resources designed to support connections between Part C and Part B 619 programs. So our key purpose today is to build understanding of how CEDS can improve data integration and use across programs, and how CIID is a resource to support that. Now I'm going to pass it over to Nicholas, who will go over the purpose of CIID.
Thanks, Grace. So some of you may be familiar with CIID, but just to make sure we're all coming to this from the same place. CIID stands for the Center for the Integration of IDEA Data, and we are a technical assistance center funded by the Office of Special Education Programs. And the mission really is about helping state education agencies and lead agencies to use their data systems efficiently to collect and report accurate and timely data from Part B and Part C. So really our focus is on, again, data integration, and we'll unpack this term a little bit more coming up soon, but generally speaking, we're talking about connecting disparate data. So we like to think of it also in terms of the technology and the processes and human relationships that all come together to combine and manage data that traditionally exist in a variety of sources. And our mandated focus is the IDEA data, but the infrastructure work that we often are engaged in often reaps benefits more broadly and kind of echoes through other parts of the system. Some key supports that we provide include the use of data standards and modern data systems, and effective coordination and processes across agencies. And our ultimate goal really is to make it easier for all of you to use high quality data to improve your IDEA programs and ultimately leading to better outcomes for infants, toddlers, and children with disabilities and their families. So some of you who've been involved with CIID in the past or have been familiar with it at least know that it's been around for a while. Largely, originally the focus was on Part B with some, we've kind of waded into the Part C space for some partnerships and individual projects. But this time around with the new cycle, there is a definite focus and intention broadly on Part C. And we like to think of it as kind of a new TA center. Even the Part C focus is new. And we're trying to be really intentional from the start here about how we engage with the Part C early intervention community. So it's a sort of new and expanded scope. And there are three pillars of that we're thinking of how we provide support. One is around knowledge development. And within that, we're seeking a few things. One is to deepen evidence about the tangible benefits of data integration. Another is to build a common understanding of data standards within the Part C community. And then finally, we're really standing on the shoulders of a lot of people who've laid the groundwork at the federal, national TA levels and within states and even locals to lay the groundwork for CIID's Part C tools and services. So there's been a lot of groundwork laid already in areas like data governance and privacy, data standards, tools to sort of check and prepare data sharing procedures and mechanisms. So we're trying to leverage all of that great work that's already been done. We're also, as with a lot of TA, we know relationships are key to engaging in the work. And we want to build more relationships with all of you in the Part C space. So that includes those of you at the state level, within early intervention systems. And we're also working within an existing TA network. We have other partners that are trying to help on this project. In fact, Grace and I both work on the DaSy project as well, the DaSy TA Center. You may be familiar with them. So we do a lot of TA through that TA project specifically for early intervention and preschool special ed systems and their data systems. So we're trying to pull together, there's a whole host and constellation of TA that's coming together to support all of you. So I do want to mention there are sort of three other specific goals that we have within this new cycle. One is to, I mentioned one already, really is around the knowledge development. We want to establish a complete set of data elements in the Common Education Data Standards, which that sort of nexus of work we're going to unpack as well for you. But we want to make sure those are really useful for Part C reporting. And then we're also thinking about how we develop tools that states can use to automate the generation of some of the key data files that you're responsible for. Next slide, please. Okay. So at the top here, we wanted to get you thinking, about how CIID may be able to help you. Perhaps you've accessed TA from CIID before, maybe you haven't. If you haven't, we just want to make sure you're familiar with what we can provide. We certainly can provide customized, multi-year technical assistance to support your data integration projects. And those can take the form of, several things. One is around, some intensive TA around data governance. And specifically within that, we do a lot of work within, the privacy and confidentiality areas, but making sure you have strong policies and procedures and that they're documented well, and that they perhaps can, or maybe we can help you consider how they would be extended to fit your Part C data if that, if you're intending to put that in scope. We do a lot of cohorts, TA cohorts, and topic-based work groups. We can help you create state-specific resources, for example, things like documentation or user guides. And we also can help you provide other tools and products, whether it's state-specific or more generally. One thing to note here, we've done a lot of work in the Part B space around the Generate tool, which is a solution for integration and reporting that CIID has already developed. We can also provide you with project management support and even things like the BA and development support that we know is so critical to the work, on the ground within your agency. We can definitely help you flesh that out. Okay.
All right, so
And turn it back over to you, Grace. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicholas. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the Part C Data Bridge Summit that we had in May, where we had the opportunity to hear from 4 states on some ideas and priorities. So in those conversations, we heard a lot of shared goals and challenges. And one of the biggest themes was integration. So states wanted to connect data across Part C, Part B, early childhood, health, fiscal, and K-12 systems. but many of those systems simply don't talk to each other. So while the systems may look different from state to state, the vision is very similar, wanting more connected and integrated data. Another theme we heard was a shift towards continuous improvement. So using data not just for compliance, but to improve services and outcomes. There was also an emphasis on data quality as a priority. So states may have a lot of data, but that doesn't always mean it's timely, accessible, or easy to use for data for decision making. So looking ahead, states want more connected data ecosystems that bring together referrals, services, outcomes, and funding. So these insights from the Data Bridge Summit, they're helping us guide how we think about future data solutions for Part C. So with that said, as we are expanding our scope to Part C focus, we would love your feedback to help us understand your needs and what is valuable to you. So if you could please take a moment to provide feedback on Part C solutions, you can access this form through the QR code, and also Taylor, I think, will help put the Part C feedback form link into the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Liz. And so we'll give you a few moments to provide feedback. Again, we would really appreciate hearing from you. It helps us understand how we can best serve our Part C partners. So thank you again for taking the time to fill this out. We're just going to give you like a few moments for that. All right, we'll have the link in the chat just in case you want to get to it later. But now Liz is going to go over what we mean by a data standard and data integration.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, so before we can talk about CEDS specifically, we need to have a shared understanding of these two terms. So what is a data standard and what is data integration? Okay, so a data standard is really just a common language. If you think about language itself, a standard form of communication, right? However, humans speak several different languages. So if we don't share one, we won't be able to understand each other. So for certain things, we need a common language or a standard in order to make sure that everyone is receiving the same message when it's sent out. That essentially is a data standard or a standardization. So you're agreeing in advance what something specifically means so that we don't have to translate or guess every time something is discussed or something is brought to our attention. Data standards do that same exact job for data. They allow different systems and different people to use that data in the same exact way. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so kind of diving into this a little bit more, let's talk about a specific example. So I'm like a very visual person, so this example always helps me like think about it and kind of just level set. So transportation symbols, right? So imagine you land at an airport and you're in a country where you don't speak the language. How do you find a gate? How do you find the bathroom? How do you understand where you're supposed to go for a taxi or something like that? So you're not, obviously you can't read every word and every sign that you see. You're looking for the specific symbols. So that is a perfect example of a standard at work. Next slide, please. Okay, so these symbols that you see that we've all seen at airports previously, this is a universal travel sign standard that was developed back in the 1970s. And so you can see here, we see cars, we see no smoking, we see a telephone, escalators, anything like that, right? None of these require you to have to be able to speak English or French or Mandarin, depending on wherever you are. These were designed once, they were agreed on internationally, and now they work all over the world. That's exactly the role of a data standard. So you agree on it once and you move information, and that way you can understand it across those different systems and different audiences as well. Okay, so now that we have a shared understanding of what a data standard is, let's look at one obviously that's relevant to our work, the Common Education Data Standards, or better known as CEDS. So what is CEDS? CEDS is it's a common vocabulary. It provides standard definitions for specific education elements. It provides option sets associated with those elements, and then it also provides technical specifications that really streamline how we share and compare education data. It is the product of a national collaborative effort. So education agencies at every level came together to agree on a shared set of data elements that is what makes up CEDS. And I just want to point out, I know it's in here somewhere on this slide, but this is a voluntary thing, right? No one's making anyone join or be a part of CEDS. However, what we have seen is when programs choose to be a part of it, or when they choose to adopt CEDS, they really gain the ability to talk to each other using the same vocabulary. So again, we've seen where it's allowing different audiences, different, key set of people to be able to dive into that, have a deeper understanding of where they're working from and how they're working together. I've included the CEDS website here, so I think you can actually click on it, or Taylor, if you want to throw it in the chat, you can access it this way. You can dive into it and you can kind of just become more acquainted with it if you're interested in that. Slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so now let's discuss what is data integration, right? So data integration is the combination of all of these different things. So a combination of technical, business processes used to join data from disparate systems, like Nicholas mentioned earlier, and really moving them into a meaningful and valuable information. If you notice here in that image that's on the right-hand side of your screen, it's not really just about technology, right? I know people always think like, oh, data integration is very technical and I don't necessarily understand it. But there's a whole portion of it that's specifically about people and the processes and the different systems. So as you can see, if you may have all of the right technical processes or the right technical systems in place, but without people buying into that, or people there to support you, or the correct processes to document it, or the correct technical systems to occur, none of those things are going to work. Like, they can't work separately without, all of the different pieces coming together to really create that data integration piece in which we're looking for. And so bringing all of those things together really actually makes the data usable and more useful in a way that we've seen across several different organizations. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so why does this matter? Why does data integration matter? So this is an image, I think Nicholas provided this, and it's I loved it from the first time I saw it. So this really gives us a full picture of data from children or students, right? It moves from schools to providers. From there, it moves through local programs all the way up to state education or lead agencies. And then from there, at that point, they can push it out into actual reporting pieces that are either to public or a specific set of stakeholders, depending on who the audience is. When that flow is integrated, one connected system instead of several disconnected pieces, it becomes something really valuable. It becomes an integrated data system that supports policymaking. It supports program effectiveness, personnel development, and can even support cross-program analysis. Again, coming back to why does this really matter? This creates one source of truth rather than multiple systems. So I'm sure you've all been in a scenario where you're having a conversation with someone and, you have a source of truth, or a different person has a different source of truth. And, there's all these different systems that are being intermingled into the conversation. Well, standardization and integration makes that where it's really, you really both of you are able to point to that one source of truth, which is so important in this bigger picture of kind of just standardization, data integration, and all of those different pieces. I think that is my last slide. So with that, Nicholas, I'm going to pass it back over to you for the next one.
Thanks, Liz. Okay. So there are 3 terms that we often hear in this space, and they're similar, but they have distinct differences, and we wanted to help you unpack those and understand what's going on here. And those terms are data sharing, linking, and integration. Now, I'm not sure where all of you are coming from in your roles, but I'd be willing to bet that most of you have done at least some data sharing and maybe some data linking, but perhaps less so true data integration. Again, I may be off there, but in my experience, most of us have been involved in the first 2. Let's kind of unpack what this is. And I like to think about this in terms of data connections along a continuum here. And there are different parts of a data system that can sort of be more akin to data linking versus integration, for example, and other parts that might be flipped. But generally speaking, this is kind of a helpful framework to wrap your head around it. So let's start on the left side with data sharing. So data sharing is fairly transactional. You typically grant access to a data set. The original data stays put, and maybe you either grant access to it or kind of copy it and send it to somebody else. Now, your partners can get access to the information in that way that they can't reach in their own data systems. So that might be one solution. Another solution for bringing data or sharing data, connecting them somehow, is with data linking. And typically we see this, broadly speaking, where the data sources are kept, but a new linked data set is created. And that can be often in terms of either a common identifier or some kind of probabilistic matching process based on other attributes and records. And in that case, records for the same entity are essentially connected across sources, right? But the originals are preserved and a new data set is created. Data integration kind of takes all of that and takes it one step further. So you've got combined sources of data in one new data set. And often, not always, it can, the actual way it's implemented can be a little nuanced and different across solutions, but typically the original data sets are merged into a single, more comprehensive data set, and it becomes generally, hopefully, more efficient than the other 2 methods, especially for repeated processes. Data sharing may be okay for just a one-off solution, but a lot of our business is repeated over time. And that's where data integration can be really powerful. If you'd like to learn more about these differences, I recommend you check out the DaSy blog that we're going to link for you in the chat, hopefully, and it's also linked there on the slides. It comes from a DaSy Center resource. Okay, next slide, please. We did also want to highlight a couple of other resources from the DaSy Center. Again, we've been that particular TA center has been doing a lot of work previously broadly with data systems, including data linking and integration within the early intervention and preschool special ed world. I wanted to share 4 other key resources that are really helpful around this topic. For those of you on the DaSy listservs, you might have already seen this, but recently, I think just the other week, we released a special collection around data linking and integration, and we brought together a lot of the resources that have been previously published and tried to organize them in a more accessible fashion. And you can see a preview of that on the screenshot in the top right. We've got a couple of buckets that we've organized it around, like checking data and assessing partner readiness, formalizing, linking and analyzing, and then sustaining data linking and state examples. Another resource that we've produced at the DaSy Center is the Data Linking Toolkit. This is really focus mostly on that middle bucket that I shared earlier around data linking, maybe some data integration light concepts in there, but there's a whole toolkit around that. We do have a blog that talks about, as I alluded to earlier, there might be specific pieces of your data system, whether it's like an extract, transform, load process, or your data dictionary, or the set of standards you use. Many of those individually can be like on a different part of a data connection continuum. So that blog kind of unpacks what those features might look like and what considerations you might, what you would want to consider when you're thinking about, quote, leveling up your data system along that continuum. And then finally, on a podcast we've been producing, there's a particularly salient podcast from Utah around their journey with an CIIDS, from including the early intervention perspective. So take a gander and see what you think. Hopefully there's at least one nugget in there for you. Okay. And finally, for this section here, I did want to mention a newer initiative that some of us at CIID are engaged in, which is refreshing the Common Education Data Standards connections relevant to Part C. Now, what is a connection? Well, a connection is like one primary component within the CEDS initiative broadly. And it essentially, we don't have enough time to unpack it, but at a high level, it's a way to know exactly what data elements to include for specific research and evaluation or reporting needs. In other words, those critical questions that we often talk about as TA centers. And these connections are predefined for your convenience. So we try to standardize some of the more common needs out there in the field. And it will allow you as a user to address and define and calculate different metrics and indicators. So for example, something like program enrollment or your 616 data collections, there are multiple data elements often within each of those, some more than others. But it allows you to define and analyze the data for reporting in a kind of a consistent fashion using the CEDS vocabulary. It's an excellent tool for deconstructing policy or research questions. And one of the nice features is you can search through some of the previously created, or all of them really, all of the previously created connections. And it also includes reports that provide options for linking CEDS properties across the related connections. If you're curious to learn more about this, just please drop a note in the chat or maybe even follow up with us after the webinar. But now that you know kind of generally what the connections are, I did want to mention that CIID and DaSy are currently collaborating to add or update the CEDS connections relevant to all of the 616 and 618 data collections. And we're starting with some of the probably high leverage and lowest hanging fruit here, which is the exiting collection, the child count and settings collection, and indicator 8, which is that transition data collection. That's indicator C8. So we, based on what we learned from that process, we hope to expand it and eventually achieve similar updates or fill gaps where there might be some for the early intervention world. Okay. Next slide. All right. So we'd like to talk about different ways that CEDS could benefit you. What can it do for you? We wanted to spark some inspiration for applying data integration by sharing a few high-level examples to start. And then we're going to hear from one state about their journey with integrating data in the early care and education space. So just a few examples to start us off with. And these are various applications you can consider. And if you'd like to talk about any one or more of these with us and think about what it could look like in your state, please do reach out to us. So CEDS can serve as the foundation for a number of things, and I've just listed a few. One is connecting disparate databases within Part C and between Part C and other programs and agencies. I say within Part C because I have come across some programs, maybe you're one of them, where something like your child outcomes data exists in a different database or maybe in a spreadsheet that is separate from your enrollment databases. And maybe you want to bring those together. That's something that data integration can achieve. Or maybe you want to do something like looking at referrals, across your system and bringing together those disparate data sets. That might be an example of that kind of second part. CEDS can also do something as upstream as developing or helping you develop a data dictionary. You may already have a data dictionary, or maybe you're saying, what is a data dictionary? In which case, we'd recommend that you think about building one out, and that's something that CIID can help you do, which is essentially creating documentation of what all of your individual data elements are, what are the option sets, how are they used, what's the technology maybe behind them, the metadata, those kinds of things. CEDS can serve as that kind of backbone for creating a data dictionary. So if you don't have one yet, that might be a really good place to start. It can also serve to translate early childhood data elements and use cases to any existing data standards. Your lead agency, especially if you're not in a state education agency for Part C, may already have other data standards. If you don't know if that is true within your agency, I would recommend you go talk to somebody in IT in your agency. I'm sure they would be willing to have, to geek out with you on what set of data standards are available, or if you don't have one already, that might also be a good first step to exploring data integration. But CEDS can help you sort of make sense and translate the early childhood specific data elements that we're focused on to whatever might be in place. A lot of this work that we're engaged in, I mentioned already, but this can facilitate reporting of your 616 and 618 data, and we're trying to update those connections as a really solid foundation for doing just that. And all of this is really in service of answering critical questions of interest. So you may have a research or analysis agenda or different questions that you've prioritized. And those are, you've got to understand the why behind what you're doing. That's going to drive everything you're doing. And the CEDS infrastructure is really a great way to kind of support the technical infrastructure for doing those kinds of analyses. Okay, next slide.
All right,
turn it over to Grace.
We're very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Catherine Fuselier, Nevada IDA Part B Data Manager, to share Nevada's story. Welcome, Catherine.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us here today to share our little story in Nevada and how we have embraced CEDS and data integration for several years now. Just some little bit of background information about Nevada. So state of Nevada has about 500,000 total enrollment students. About 70,000 of them are being served under IDEA Part B. We have 22 school districts, so they're primarily based around county lines, but we have one state public charter school, which is like statewide charters. October 2025 count, just some ideas, is that we had about 13,000 preschool students enrolled, and over a little over 5,000 of them were IDEA Part B students aged 3 through 5. So almost 40% of our total enrolled pre-K students are students with disabilities. We have one of the largest school districts in the nation. And we also have some of the smallest school districts. We have one school district that has less than 50 total enrolled students, but their jurisdictional area is over 4,000 square miles. We have a statewide IEP system and a statewide student information system. So those are some pretty key elements on our data integration journey. And that we started about 10 years ago when we started the statewide student information system. As our intent has always been to have our student information system, like be the source of truth, as you heard earlier discussed, as a kind of a hub, and have applications and information pulled directly from and tied back into our student information system. So some of the things that this data integration journey has allowed Nevada to do is, of course, improve data quality. Before we were really moving along this train, we had that very standard uncommon definitions of data elements, both within the state and within districts and the state. So we were receiving information from districts that didn't match what the state had or what the federal government was expecting us to have. We had a lot of siloed operations, IT being at the table and running reports, and then program teams receiving reports later on and it not maybe possibly matching what they were expecting to see or needing to see. It was that discussion of what is it that we're trying to answer. We had lack of trust between the districts and the state. Districts often saying that's not the data that we have for in our piece. So that was a big piece, and then lots and lots of data errors in our federal IDA Part B files. We would do a lot of data cleanup, and we would submit them, and then we would be asked in the open resubmission period to try again. So we were doing a lot of repeated work. But so of course, since then, and since our work on and integrating CEDS into our data warehouse and utilizing more integration tools, we have a common data dictionary that we learned about, but it's not only just at the SEA level, it's now also integrated with the LEA data dictionaries, and so that our common elements match. Our submitted IDA files are accurate and on time and complete. Sometimes we have no errors, and I wonder if the EdPass system ran it correctly, because I'm used to seeing issues in the files, and then we're having this a stronger data integration between our student information system and other applications that produce reports, and other NDE databases of information. We also not only submit IDA files through our common system, but we produce other federally reported files, which helps us again align standard data definitions and pieces throughout all the files that come out of Nevada for federal reporting. The data integration pieces has strongly been able to support automations in our reports. We're able to link we use the generate tool, but we're able to link our reporting platform tool to our student information system and actually pull data across and utilize it more efficiently. We're able to utilize other tools like Power BI to generate output reports and help us analyze the data that's in the system. Data is easily available. IT is not the only one with access to the data anymore, so that's been helpful to have other program staff and members of the state to be able to get in there. It's non-duplicative. A lot of that work was in when we did that common data standard, and we're able to reduce duplication in our data structure tables. and of course, standardize permitted values in our reporting, which has decreased discrepancies tremendously. So just most recently, we had an example where we were having 2 fields of Title I information, and we adopted the CEDS value and standardized those tables. So now we have 1 table, and we're able to point all of these reports to that 1 table as the common element. As mentioned earlier, a lot of the collaboration work is key in this. We're a small state staff, so utilizing CEDS has enabled us to not have to create new definitions. Basically, we can lean into established common elements. We have cross-office and now cross-state agency teams at the table to discuss these elements and how we're going to streamline and clean and have more efficient use of our data. So that relationship key part is really big key. And through this, we can, I wouldn't say like data integration is a core value of the department, and we're starting to see its use and benefit in multiple ways for us to continue to build better and stronger systems. So again, not only with our student information system that is connected with other platforms, but we have a standalone special education collection and reporting platform for some things like our early childhood outcomes data collection, our integrated monitoring pieces. But many fields of that are in alignment with CEDS, and so it enables us to connect with and integrate with our student information system and our outputting systems because of that commonality. We recently, a few years ago, had essentially that perfect storm where OSEP came and visited the state of Nevada in a monitoring visit, and we were able to find opportunities to build stronger relationships between our Part C and Part B entities. We're both in 2 different state departments, but through that and the lead of our early childhood special education director and our Part C director, really starting that conversation and relationship building about how can we more efficiently and effectively use the data and integrate the data between our 2 pieces. And some of the discussion earlier was like we started with a visualization. Everybody was asked to like talk about transition and kind of visualize the data, how it moves through the system of transition. And they were all different and all unique. And it reminded me about how everybody has their own common, uncommon data definition of the pieces. And so, working on standardizing that and building the relationship and connections. And then a couple more things that are starting to occur is the Office of Early Learning and Development within the department has also started a statewide collaborative effort, bringing in multiple state agencies and programs and departments on an early childhood integrated data system. And we're starting with that was one building the relationships to bring people together. And then also now then discussing like, what are the questions that we may want to answer? So knowing what what kind of questions we might need to answer, that helps us understand like what data elements do we need connected and in part of this data integration system that we're going to build. And then the department as itself, through driven by state legislation, the governor wants to know what's going on with almost the return on investment idea. So again, this huge kind of data integration piece and using CEDS to link multiple systems, both financial and our student information and our reporting and analytics. So, so a lot of integration occurring in the state of Nevada with our IDEA Part B as the early pilot in all that, and the benefits and the outcomes that we've seen in our data quality and our use and our collaboration. So that's a little bit about Nevada and our journey to integrate our data.
Catherine, thank you so much for sharing Nevada's story in the application of CDS in the real world. We hope that inspired our audience some ideas for your own programs. So now we're going to move on to the Q&A section of our webinar. We invite you all to share in the chat any questions or thoughts you might have. Feel free to also raise your hand as well if you want to come off mute. So we have some prompts here. You can share something that squares with you, so something you might agree with, something you will remember or what resonated with you, something you're still circling around or have questions about, or just anything you would like clarification on or are interested in. So we'll give you a few moments to think on what you want to share.
Yeah, so Doris put in the chat, has Nevada published their CEDS map?
I don't believe so. I could ask. I seen an image and I thought that is not an image I want to share in the webinar because it's like that original one where you got things moving all around the place. So yeah, I
The
can
reason
ask.
I ask is
Yeah.
we're in the process of doing our early childhood, early learning mapping, and we have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna try and steal from you guys, if you would share.
Yep.
Any other questions or thoughts? See, Tony says, wonderful journey, Catherine. Agreed. It's always great to be able to highlight and elevate state voices. So. I'm still giving that teacher pause just in case. We've got a few more minutes for any questions. Yes, if you can't tell, I used to be a teacher.
I don't have any more questions, but I can echo the thought of integrating the data. That's the big place that we're running into, is that we have Part C, we have Part B, and then we have our other stuff. And we are a birth to 26 for our special ed services in our state. So we have that to work around as well. But getting them all integrated so that it's all consistent across the board will be fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So Doris, with your thought, I do makes me think of a question for Catherine. And Catherine, when you mentioned that the Office of Early Learning and Development is bringing in multiple offices for ECIDS, was there a strategy in terms of determining who they were going to bring to the table? Was it going to be done incrementally and start small?
Yeah. So with that, like I could say the special ed came in eventually to the table. I know my understanding is that there was an advisory group that started that, and then from there that came into this global work group, and so there are a lot of people at the table already. Everybody's there up front, and we can send that also with that that piece to the team to circulate some information, but there's quite a few people at the table already.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Tony. And I see also, will this webinar be posted? That is the plan. Thank you, Taylor, for putting the link of our website onto the chat. All right, so we can move on then to our contact page because we do want to get to our survey. So thank you again for being here today. We're so glad that you're here. Before you leave, here is our contact information if you have any questions about today's content. And then we're also going to have a quick 3-minute survey. So let's pop on over to that. Yes, so this survey, again, it's 3 minutes. It's going to tell us how we did and how we can improve. And the responses are anonymous. We truly value your feedback. So this is going to help us learn what is important to you. So thank you so much again for taking the time to fill us out. We're just going to leave this on here for a few minutes. Thank you again for joining us today.